My sister had been begging, crying. We needed more time. I didn't know if we were going to make it, but I was trying so hard. I had hoped she knew I was doing my best. I understood how she felt. I didn't have to go at the gas station either, and we both knew there'd be a rest stop ahead. But when we got there, it was a terrifying scene. We couldn't even bring ourselves to go in. We didn't even think about how we were 60 miles to the nearest town at the time. So there we were, speeding down the tiny highway, me trying to pass slower moving traffic as safely as possible. Sweat began to form on my forehead despite the cool temperature as I mentally bargained with deities I didn't even believe in. Please, please, let us make it. I released into the universe. I'll be a better person, I promise. Why did I drink all that iced green tea? But finally, we were entering back into a small town. I saw a billboard that advertised a diner at the next exit. Gina was out and running before the car was even in park. I tried to get myself together. Running was no longer an option for me. I stood up slowly, carefully, delicately shuffled towards the entrance. It definitely looked the part of an old-school diner with the shiny mirror-like exterior. It looked old enough to actually be an authentic 50s diner from back in the day. When I opened the door, something about the place struck me as odd. The air was hot, stifling even, thick with humidity. It was far too hot considering the crisp early afternoon air. You'd think someone would have opened a window or the door. Otherwise, the interior was what you'd expect from a small-town diner. Booths in cute magenta and teal coloring, the kinds where the vinyl fabric had a silvery glitter, an empty milkshake bar with matching stools. A waitress even had a poodle skirt on, but otherwise the place looked pristine, like it had just opened yesterday. Maybe it was just a well-done recreation after all. There were also way too many people in there, some with heavy sweaters. How were they not literally melting? As Gina and I had entered the town, the sign had said, "Welcome to Population 250. I'm hesitant to share the town name here. Population 250? Why was like half the entire town in here on a Wednesday at 12 p.m.? No one acknowledged me when I came in. I always feel guilty going in somewhere just to use the restroom. I'd buy Gina and I a milkshake after I peed. Actually, no more beverages. But we'd buy something. Gina wasn't in the women's room when I went in. Weird, because she hadn't been in the restaurant either. Maybe there was a back door and she got overheated and went to the car. After I finally was free from my liquid burden, I opened the door. I felt something different in the atmosphere of the place. What was it? I looked to the nearest booth, where the unblinking stare of a stranger made me do a double take. There it was, the subtle difference. Every single patron was now staring at me, frozen otherwise. Their bodies hadn't moved at all, but everyone now looked at me without blinking. Some had their necks almost contorted so they could stare at me. Actually, not everyone was staring at me. One thin teenage girl in a plaid jacket was sitting at the milkshake bar, staring forward. It was Gina. I didn't see her there before when I ran to the bathroom. Had she been here the whole time? I walked up to her, looked over my shoulder, and noticed that everyone had silently shifted in the time I had taken my eyes off them. They were staring at me again in my new location. "Gina," I leaned towards her ear, whispered. "We need to go, now." I saw her shiver, despite the heat in here. She had a small sundae in front of her, with one tiny spoonful missing. "Gina, please, we'll get something to eat in the next town." She moved slightly, a micro-movement. She shook her head. I turned to look over my shoulder. Smiles had formed on all the patrons' faces. Not happy, welcome to our town smiles, but excited, hungry almost. I leaned down again, whispered, "Let's go, something isn't right here." She pulled me closer to her with the hand I was leaning over, as if to hide the movement from the other patrons and staff. "They only needed one," she whispered to me, still staring ahead. "Please go. I love you." I stood up, noticed tears streaming down her otherwise emotionless face. I choked back a sob for a reason I couldn't explain. but told myself it was okay. She had just turned 17. She was old enough to sit at a diner by herself until I went for help. I backed away, never letting her out of my sight, though she continued to stare straight ahead. I turned, opened the door, gave one last look to Gina so I could tell myself she'd be okay until I got back. She stared at me, a wide smile that didn't reach her eyes, which were still wet. It was dark outside, where the 60-degree breeze felt like I had stepped into a freezer after the hot, humid interior. I couldn't have been inside more than 30 minutes, tops. I cried in the car after I called the police. I told them that my sister was acting weirdly. She wouldn't leave, but she seemed scared. I was worried she was being held against her will. They came, just one guy, probably due to the oddness of my story and my age. But the thing is, when he opened the door, the place was the same, but different. It had sound, air conditioning, people were moving, talking, laughing. It was grungier. It was a whole different group of people, and much smaller. It was exactly what you'd expect from a small-town diner. Gina wasn't there. I had sat in the parking lot, watching the only door until the police came. She didn't leave. I had tried calling her, but her phone had been disconnected. Every year on that day, I make the drive. I'm heading out there tomorrow. It's the 4th anniversary. Every time I open the door, waiting for the stifling air to see Gina at the bar, hoping they'll need one more.